What's up guys, in this video we're gonna talk about a computer that came in a box with a bunch of old parts such as this thing, this, and a motherboard with a processor of some kind, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Today, we're going to review this. You might be wondering why we're going to review an old box, but this is not your regular box. This is a box of PC parts that might or might not have worked as a computer at one point. We're going to test this with the parts that it was sent here. I like doing this because it's a way of honoring the build of the original owner or seller. After all, somebody put some thought into this. In many cases, this is not ideal. Usually there's a part that underperforms and others that overperform within the combo, but that's okay. In the future, we can revisit some of these parts in other builds. Experiment number 2? I wonder what experiment number 1 was. If my buddy that donated this to the channel would care to explain, go ahead and tell us in the comments section what experiment number 1 was. Or if you want to take a wild guess, go ahead too. The first thing I'll pull out of the box here is a GeForce 7200 GS. This card was released in 2006 and it's very much so for the budget market. Built with the G72 chip, this video card has 256 megs of DDR2 and 64-bit memory bus, basically the lowest you can go. It uses a passive cooling system, but there is heatsink on both sides, so maybe there's some hope for it. It's actually pretty heavy and it feels like it has a good build quality. That just goes to show you, even in a budget card, there can be a premium feel to something. This was made by XFX and I congratulate them for it. The motherboard in the box is an Asus P5NSLI and it was also released in 2006 as a second-tier performance motherboard. A sort of budget performance motherboard, if that is even possible. Instead of having the flagship Enforce 590 SLI chipset, it has the 570 SLI chipset, a watered down version of the 590, lacking a few of the resources of its bigger brother. Instead of 48, it has 20 PCI Express lanes, and instead of having two 16x SLI slots, it drops to 8x per slot, but only in SLI. Remember, at this point in time, no video card could saturate the 8x port. These missing resources have little to no impact on the final result of the build. As for internal ports, it has 2 PCI Express 16x slots, 3 1x slots, and 2 regular PCI slots. PCI slots are absolutely necessary for retro builds, as you can use them with a cool sound card to give you EAX, A3D, or any other 3D sound hardware acceleration if you so desire. Furthermore, we have 4 SATA ports and 2 IDE hard drive ports, as well as a floppy disk drive IDE port and 4 memory slots supporting dual channel DDR2 at up to 667 MHz. With this motherboard, you have to manually configure it for SLI by switching the side that this little board is connected. The box PC included 2 sticks of memory. One of them sports a beautiful silver aftermarket heat spreader that I dare not remove, and I imagine the memory sticks are of the same brand and specs so they can run in dual channel mode. Something we'll find out soon. One of them I can tell is a 2GB stick at 667 MHz. There is even a PSU included in the box. It's a generic Mtek 650 watt PSU that seems pretty powerful for a generic type PSU, so I'm glad with it. Usually, these older PSUs work well with retro PCs because of the way the current is distributed throughout the rails. There's even an IO shield I can use if I ever decide to put this in a case, and there's a note. He also stuck an exhaust fan in here and made some cutouts in the box, things that hint us this box was actually really used as a computer case. The note says, "Sandra's old computer." Well, thank you, Sandra. I don't know you, but I appreciate you. So let's assemble this computer and see what it can do in games from around its time period. I'm pretty sure the box PC won't be able to run AAA games from its time because of the budget video card, but we can go back year by year until we reach a comfortable period to pull out games from. Most old PSUs are not dual voltage. I was lucky to spot that this one wasn't set on the proper voltage before I turned it on, or it would blow smoke on my workbench. And of course we have to do a little troubleshooting to get something started. Nothing I work on ever boots up in the first try, but after taking a few things off and switching a few parts, it was easy to find out the SLI switcher board wasn't properly seated. So it boots and we can see the processor is a 3.4 GHz Pentium D. The Pentium D is basically two Pentium 4s on the same chip. This one is either the 945 or the 950. Those have the same specs with two instances of level 2 cache at 2 MB each. The only difference is the power consumed and the thermal output. This processor was released in 2006. That is cool because that puts all of our major parts on this build as being from the year 2006, motherboard, video card, and processor. Another thing we can see is that the memory sticks do work in dual channel, and that is a good indicator that they have the same specs and are probably from the same brand. Now that everything seems to be working, we're gonna set the boot order to start with the CD-ROM so we can give the system a fresh Windows XP install. So install the XP, and after installing MSI Afterburner and running it, right away I can tell this video card is not in a very good situation, running at over 70 degrees Celsius in idle. That's way too hot and we're gonna do something about it. Here's a fan that will fit the bill, so the 7200 GS will borrow this fan that really is not being used, and we're gonna find some screws that fit here to attach it directly to the heatsink. A very simple mod that should help us with the temperature issue. Just by doing this, the GPU temperature dropped about 20 degrees Celsius, and that should make it safe for gaming. Alright, so finally to the games, and we are going to start with a game from the year 2006 when most parts of this build were released. It's pretty clear that the video card is going to be the Achilles heel of the system, being a budget oriented card. And not only that, but the second cheapest and weaker card of the 19 different variations from the GeForce 7 series. So starting with the 2006 game, here is Gothic 3 in the minimum possible settings and resolution. I have been trying to find an excuse to play this game forever. It's got plenty of titles in the series, and I just had to know what it's about. Well, it turns out it's an open world action RPG, much like the games in the Elder Scrolls series. Unfortunately, it's completely unplayable on the configuration that the box PC sits. As expected. It just can't climb over the 10 FPS hill. Going into this, I already knew that this video card wouldn't play AAA games from its year, and with that, let's try a couple of games from 2005. Quake 4 is extremely well optimized and usually runs great. It uses the same engine as Doom 3, but it's a bit better lit, as Doom 3 is a very dark game. What ID Software did to this engine is incredible. No other game from its year is capable of showing the textures this game shows, and it scales very well. Dropping the visual settings, you can even play it with the hardware on the box PC, achieving decent frame rates. In 2005, another GTA title was released, becoming an instant classic, GTA San Andreas. It's a cool game, it's got very basic textures, and maybe this could help our struggling 7200 GS. It's an open world game with many buildings and aspects of San Andreas, a city based on Los Angeles. 2004 showed us some amazing games like Doom 3 and Far Cry with the stunning island visuals, and also a fan favorite, Half-Life 2, a game that's remembered as one of the best games ever released, with fans that are to this day asking for a sequel 16 years after the game was released. Half-Life 2 is completely playable with this setup, although you still need to keep the configuration of graphical details at a minimum to get decent frame rates. From 2003, Halo is a very graphical intense game, and it's always a required test from games from this era. From this year and back, we can start to play with a few more visual details, not much though, because being ported from the Xbox at its peak, Halo is a very demanding game for its time, and it plays great on the box PC settings. I'll really recommend that if you are running a retro setup like this one, you play games from 2003 and back. In 2002, we are already 5 years behind the release of the GeForce 7200 GS, and if it can't run games from 2002, I don't know what it can do. Mafia is one of my favorite games. It has a 1930s setting with the music and the cars in a way that makes me want to play this for days. I believe that this is the best game released in 2002. the new Mafia game should come out before the end of the year, but while it doesn't, there's nothing wrong with playing the original Mafia. We're going to wrap this up with our Aquamark3 chart. Since we got the box PC all put together, we might as well go ahead and find a place for the GeForce 7200 GS on our Aquamark3 graphics card ranking. During the recording of this video, I found the playability of the games very similar to what I experienced with a much more expensive card I recently did a review on, the GeForce 4 Ti 4600 from the year 2002. You can see that in detail by clicking on the card above. With the not surprising result on Aquamark that puts the 7200 GS just above the Ti 4600 and for a fraction of the price, as the Ti 4600 costed on its release in 2002 $400, while the 7200 GS in 2006 only costed $50. That just goes to show us once again a very known characteristic of the gaming world, which is that if you're not interested in playing a game on its release date, you can save a lot of money on hardware. Thanks for watching, stay safe, like the video, subscribe if you're into this kind of stuff, and I hope to see you next time.